Okay, let's get started. I'm Esther, one of the trustees from LifeForce Canada, and welcome to our Monday night podcast. And before we actually get fully started, I have an email directly from Peru from Karen of the Klassen family. And you're going to see me put these blue light blockers on. So if you can't see my eyes, I'll do my best here. But here's a letter from Karen. Just got back to Lima yesterday after a full day of hiking through Machu Picchu. What an incredible mystical experience that was. Can't wait to hear more. They hired Sherpas to take them by horseback to Rainbow Mountain, which is part of the Andes Mountains. The peak of that mountain is 5,200 meters. That's 17,100 feet above sea level. To put that in perspective, Rainbow Mountain's peak has roughly the same altitude as Mount Everest's base camp, which I think Karen of the Wickerson family has and Drummond has been to. The horses can only go 90% of the way, so we walked as high as we could. We did not make it to the top, but had the most spectacular adventure. And this is the last week to prepare. We took a 2-day tour to Lake Titicaca, which is also high in the Andes on the border of Peru and Bolivia. It's the highest navigational lake in the world at 12,500 feet. We had to walk very slowly and take a break every 5 minutes. And tomorrow they enter the Amazon jungle, so they will have no Wi-Fi if anyone's trying to reach Karen at all. She will be out of touch for a little bit of time, as you might imagine. And Claire and Carol and Karen send everyone lots of love. So that's news from Peru. Very exciting. Today, we have our guest, Bill Chalmers, with us. And so I am so pleased. Welcome, Bill. I'm so pleased to be interviewing Bill and participating in this process. And the title of his talk is Three Steps to Sacred Optimism, Eyes Open, Mind Engaged, and Heart Awake. There was a little bio of Bill in the email that most of you received to get the link for today's event. And just a little bit, you might not know this about Bill, but he's done so many things in his life. He was a cowboy in his early 20s at 100 Mile House. He was also a guy in construction, had 19 companies and I don't know, 120 guys working for him way back in the day. He was into real estate. He started coaching. He's coached so many people from various different walks of life, from, I don't know, custodians to prime ministers. So his career has been so varied and it's been phenomenal. And he's found himself in the last 20 years also becoming an artist. So as a speaker, he's an author. He's just had so many different things in his life that he's done, and it's a privilege to call him my beloved as well. And so we're so happy you're here with us, Bill, today, and talking about a subject that is so important, especially in these times, optimism. Pretty key topic to be discussing. And we are going to have a Q&A section after. So please, as usual, if you do have a question, put it in the chat and in this format, if you would. Let me just put this in here. Just put it like this with somebody sending me a private message here. Let me just get this question and then insert the question here. And just like that. And then I will keep track of those as we go along. And if you have questions during the talk, I will be keeping track of that as well. And if it's appropriate to insert as time goes along, then we will do that as well. So welcome, Bill Chalmers. Thank you for being here.
Delighted. I have been looking forward to this. It's one of the biggest challenges I think we faced, certainly in the last 5 or 6 years, to try to figure out how to get back to our optimism, how to get back to our seeing the positive sides of life without being Pollyanna. You've probably all heard of How to Win Friends and Influence People, Dale Carnegie. When he wrote it in 1936, he was invited to go to the Dutch Treat Club in New York. And this is a group of editors, publishers, advertising people, and they were not impressed with his work. They thought it was a pointless waste of time. He'd already sold 500,000 copies, but that didn't matter. And so he was going in for a tough audience, and they were, in fact, ready to eat him alive. And here's what he said when he was introduced. This is a quote direct from him. "I know there's considerable criticism of my book. People say I'm not profound and there's nothing in it new to psychology and human relations. That is true. Gentlemen, I have never claimed to have a new idea. Of course, I deal with the obvious. I present, reiterate, and glorify the obvious because the obvious is what people need to be told. The greatest need of people is to know how to deal with other people. This should come naturally to them, but it doesn't. I'm told you're a hostile audience, but I plead not guilty. The ideas I stand for are not mine. I borrowed them from Socrates, I swiped them from Chesterfield, I stole them from Jesus and Buddha and Mohammed, and I put them in a book. If you don't like their rules, whose would you use? I would be glad to listen." My intention today is I will share some of my wisdom after my 7+ decades on the planet. But I'm going to, because I've done a bunch of work to try to figure out how best to point optimism to where it truly belongs. And I'm going to quote people throughout the entire first third of this conversation. Here we go.
Excellent. I know that you wanted to talk about three things in particular: disillusionment, discernment, and determination. So maybe if you could start with, because we talked about this in the title even, the sacred role of disillusionment as a trigger or an opening, but not a dead end. Tell us a little bit about what you're thinking in terms of that.
Great. Disappointment is a temporary detour on the road to success. That's it, Zig Ziglar. Disappointment can be a blessing in disguise. It often leads us to something better than what we had originally hoped for. And all of us have had one of those where, oh, I can't get this done. It's not working the way I want. I want to cook this meal. It's not working. And you end up putting something together, and after we're just like, I should have written that down. It's the best thing I've ever cooked. Those are the kind of places. It should have been a disappointment, and we were holding it as a disappointment, but here's what happened. We actually got to do something else. And sometimes inadvertently, sometimes because we had no other choice. But that can be really powerful. And the only real disappointment in life is the failure to try. That's George Bernard Shaw, who, yes, miserable misogynist. We're going to talk about him a little later too. Disappointment is a powerful teacher. It reminds us to reassess our expectations and find strength in resilience. Thich Nhat Hanh said, "When disappointment knocks on your door, greet it with gratitude, for it reveals the gaps that need to be filled in order to grow." We can nurture the roses in our garden, but Esther and I have taken upon ourselves this year, there was a couple of wild plants. We had no idea what they were, but they were quite colorful. And so we decided we're going to let them go. According to the rest of the world, they're weeds. And I have to tell you, we kept them this year as well. They are gorgeous, and they need no tending. The roses needed tending. The tomatoes needed tending. These plants have taken over the yard. It's very cool. Are we willing to do that? Which is meaning we're suspending our judgment about why we should be disappointed. Disappointment is the price we pay for setting our sights, listen to this, for setting our sights too low. Disappointment is the price we pay for setting our sights too low. Elizabeth George. Disappointment is a sign that you are growing and evolving. Embrace it, for it is an essential part of the journey toward self-discovery. Paul Coelho. The conversation around disappointment is it's just a stepping stone. It's just a When there's a conflict in your relationship, lots of times we're like, oh, I'm out of here. I don't want to do this anymore. This is stupid. I have no time for this crap. But that's the crap you need to do to get better at doing it so you don't do it again. Are you willing to sacrifice yourself for that? Disappointment is a sign that you have dared to dream. Don't let it discourage you. Let it fuel your determination to turn your dream into reality. And disappointment is an invitation to redefine what truly matters to you. Use it to align your actions with your core values and your vision. Simon Sinek. Disappointment teaches us that life is full of surprises and unpredictability. Embrace the unknown, for it holds the potential for extraordinary experiences. And that's from Rumi. To me, those are the most important elements as we look at the entire premise of that disillusionment and the judgments that are virtually installed in us from a very early age.
So, Bill, when you're thinking of disappointment and disillusion, you just
Yep.
talked about both of them. How do you relate those two, especially in terms of the last 4 or 5 years? Say a little bit more about that.
The premise of the whole thing we're in, there's going to be disappointment, and we're going to be disillusioned by our leaders. Certainly around the Life Force Canada information that we have, we've got good reasons to be disappointed with our leaders. They're not leading. They're managing some stuff, and they're not doing it very well. So we can do one of two things. We can just kind of give up, be fed up, put in our place where we go, oh, it's just not worth the hassle. Or we can look at it and say, okay, since that's disappointing, what do I do in my world, in my life? What does that look like for me? And how do I do that with some level of both skill sets and expertise and even discernment? How do I leverage into the discernment that I'm going to need to figure out what's a lie and what's the truth? What's going to work, what's not going to work?
Thank you. And let's move on to discernment, the second step or pillar of what you're discussing today.
Okay. Lounsborough said, if we have relegated vision solely to the function of our eyes, we are in fact blind indeed. Try listening with more than just your ears, not just your eyes. The greatest riches in life are not obtained by what we chase, but by what we choose not to chase, for it is the exercise of wisdom that makes one truly rich. So let's talk about that for a sec. You're going over to somebody's place for dinner. You go to knock on the door, and you can hear the two of them scrapping with their 3 kids, and it is free-for-all. You knock on the door, they come to the door, they've got their arms around each other, the kids are right close, and everybody's smiling. Oh, good to see you. And the energy in the room, you could cut with a knife. So there's a place you need to trust your discernment. You need to go, whoa, these guys are way in the tank. So can you set yourself an example? Set your example. You be the example that you can lift everybody's spirits. You know, every tide lifts all boats. That's your job then in that moment. And most of us get sucked in. Oh, what are you guys fighting about? And off we go, and all of us are in the tank. So the discernment conversation, the greatest riches in life are not obtained by what we chase, and I just repeated this, but what we choose not to chase. So I'm not going to chase down after somebody going in a rabbit hole. It's not going to serve us. It's not going to help. Again, Lounsborough said, stupid and stubborn have far more in common than just the first 3 letters. How often have you caught yourself getting sucked into somebody's energy and desperately trying to get out, but it's really hard? And then sometimes we throw in a grenade and we leave. Like there's this whole place. Discernment has a doppelganger. Her name is suspicion. So we're suspicious of things, and then what happens is our discernment actually goes away. It's hard for us. Discernment's actually a tool. We have toolboxes. We've got all our tools in it. Some of you have found yourself, when you're frustrated, quick show of hands, how many of you get frustrated maybe once a day? Okay. Or more. Here's what I notice about frustration. I've taken it's a tool, by the way. I think frustration is actually a good tool. You can go, that's not going to work again. I got to do something else. So the context becomes this. Frustration is the tool I take out of my toolbox, and I sit down on top of all my other tools in the toolbox, and I'm waving my frustration around, and I've got an entire chest full of tools that I could use if I'd only, please respect this, get off my ass, open it up, and look, see what else I could use. But we are very attached to the tool that's in our hand. It may be the wrong tool. I've watched this happen as a builder of houses. The plumber comes in, he needs to drive a nail in to put a hook on something, and to put a clamp over something. And what does he use? He's got a great big pipe wrench. Oh, that'll work. It's a big heavy thing. It's a bad idea. That's how they cripple their fingers, and that's how they break things. And you got to use the right tool for the right thing. Again, frustration is totally appropriate. I have no issue with it. But is it the best thing to do in the conversation we were having when we walk in and we're expecting these people to be kind and nice to us, and their kids are tearing up the whole place? Ocean tides were not meant for the weak-willed. Diving in takes courage, but it is foresight that governs its act of fearlessness. We need fearlessness, and if frustration's the tool in your hand, you're not feeling very fearless. You want to take somebody out. Or throat punch them. That'd be a good idea. They can't talk, they can't breathe, and you get to stand there and tell them what you want to do.
Ah, but is that really above the line, Bill?
Not even close. Not even close. And I don't think that even frustration, even if it's righteous anger or righteous indignation, is above the line. If we can go to an example that this will probably offend at least half the audience, which I'm good with. When Jesus cleared the temple, I don't believe he was above the line. I believe the inspiration for it was. I believe there should be no money changes in the temple. I think that's valid. But tipping over tables and tossing people out, he's probably slipped down a little, and he had righteous indignation to do so. We think that's appropriate for us as humanity. I'm not sure it is, because my personal experiences of when I go into upset, rage, anger, putting somebody in their place, I'm pretty sure a bunch of the tools that I've got that are pretty powerful tools are dormant somewhere in the bottom of that box. Some people think they have discernment when actually they are just suspicious. Suspicion comes out of the unrenewed mind. Discernment comes out of the renewed spirit. I am convinced that discernment comes with birth. And we'll talk about this a little bit later. I think we're born to be optimistic. How many kids, can you imagine sitting a child down that's about 10 months old or a year and just starting to walk, and you know they're going to fall 4,621 times? You know it, because that's what's going to happen. And you let them know right away, oh, you don't want to do that, Bobby. That's a bad idea. Sally, just sit. Because you're going to fall, you're going to bang your face on the edge of the couch, or sorry, on the edge of the coffee table. You're going to fall and get a scar in your forehead. Yeah, terrible. Don't do it. It's not worth it. Can you imagine? What do? We encourage them. We hold our hands out. We do all the right stuff because we want them. It's the uplift. And the children are fully optimistic that they can do this because they've watched other two-legged bipeds walk around. I should be able to do that. And they fall constantly. And so there's a place that when you look at what you're trying to do, that optimism is actually built into the whole system. The victim of mind manipulation does not know that he or she is a victim. To him or her, the walls of their prison are invisible, and they believe themselves to be free. Aldous Huxley. How many of the people in your life do not buy the place you're at with Life Force Canada, the premise of what happened in the pandemic, all of those? How many friends have you got that look at you and think, boy, you are so out of touch? How can you believe that crap? And the flip is actually true, because if I'm caught in a prison, prisoners love getting out into the yard for an hour a day. They look forward to it. It's still not freedom, but it's better than an 8 by 12 cell. Everyone is prejudiced in favor of his own powers of discernment. That's from Pliny the Younger. Listen, that way back, we're talking a couple thousand years ago. Everyone's prejudiced in favor of his own powers of discernment. I know what I'm thinking. I know what I just saw. I know what's going on. I'm making my decision. God is love. Love is blind. Therefore, God is blind. Got it. I'm moving on. Wonderful connection. Not true. Obscurity is dispelled by augmenting the light of discernment, not by attacking the darkness. We got a bunch of poo happening around us, and we tend to want to dive into it and fix it. The best thing you can do with any darkness is shine a light. And again, that little song that we all sang in Sunday school, let your little light shine, because a little light puts way more light in a dark room. You only need one. If you've got 500, it's way better. No question about that. But the context becomes if I just shine this little light and somebody else does it as well, then what happens? He who knows others is clever. He who knows himself has discernment. Lao Tzu tongue. So discernment helps us when we're wrestling with, is that true? Is that valid? Does that have any merit? It helps us figure that out. And so many of our philosophers, they have these conversations going on that if you could start with a beginner's mind, what might it look like now? If you look, as we're looking back, and we see all the stuff that's coming out of the WHO, etc., and we're looking back on things that we went, hey, well, wait a sec, that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't feel like that's connecting. That doesn't feel like that data is accurate. Doesn't feel like you even have real data. And we start looking back historically now, and we're like, And here's where we have to be really careful. This is where discernment is really important. This is not the time to look at your friends in the eye and go, I told you so, because that's not going to help you. And it certainly won't help them. Big challenge. Discernment is a big deal.
Bill, there's a question in the chat.
Uh-oh.
What is your favorite tool that you might often forget to use when in a moment of stress?
You've been looking at my life the last couple of days. Thank you very much. I think it is being in the state of discerning. I've got a perfect example of this. So I took some stuff out of the freezer. It's in a bag so that I could thaw out some bone broth. It's simple. But the bone broth bag doesn't fit into the pot that I was putting it in, and it needed to have the corners chunked off. And I have an ice pick that's got 4 little prongs in it like this. All you do is push it into something that's icy and it breaks the corners off. So I held the bag and I punched the thing a couple of times and stabbed it right into my thumb. So just so you're clear, that was stupid. I wasn't stupid, but the behavior was. Like, are you effing kidding me? How could you have done that? Well, because I was more concerned with breaking off the corners and wondering if my hand would be safe. That's all. And I mean, I've been a carpenter, so I still have all my parts. But that discernment, I needed to just back up a little bit and slow down. Because if I'd have slowed down, I wouldn't have done it. For sure, I wouldn't have done it. And I think our discernment, again, it's a tool kind of leaving the toolkit. And I think it should be out all the time. I need to make sure that whatever conversations I'm having, whatever interactions I'm doing, when I'm looking at the neighbors, when I'm mowing the lawn, I don't mow the lawn with my really good dress Crocs. I know you can't believe there's such a thing as dress Crocs, but I have. I put on steel-toed shoes. And the reason I do that is because I had 3 guys working for me over the last 60 years that ran the lawnmower over their feet because poop happens. So my discernment conversation is never go out there and mow the lawn in thongs, which, by the way, is way better. It's way easier. You get a little grass, no, my big, huge, heavy work boots, which I don't want to mow the lawn very long enough because they're exhausting to wear. I don't wear them enough. That's what I put on. That's discernment. And when you look at how do I lead this workshop? How do I give this speech? If your discernment's not clearly up front, I think it can really bite you in the bum. And then when you're by the way, I think there's another element to the discernment thing. When you're in the discernment realm, it's fairly easy. It's fairly easy. And there's a big quote that I think is really important for us all. It's this. When you're in your intuition, it's uncomfortable. Your intuition will always push you outside your comfort zone, always. So if you're noticing, oh, I need to make a decision. Should I change lanes or not change lanes? It's a really simple one. If you're feeling that you shouldn't, you need to check around and see what's going on. Because if it's comfortable to stay where you are, that's your ego, and there's nothing wrong with that, except no excitement comes out of that game, and no big, huge growth ever comes out of staying with your ego. Your ego will keep you constipated, will keep you compressed. I think it's appropriate. I know this is where Eckhart Tolle and I come apart. I love his work, New Earth, all that stuff. But he wants to kill the ego. And I'm not sure that's appropriate. I think the ego belongs on the bus, back seat all the way. It's a 40-seat bus. It's in the back and has to yell a lot to be heard over all the wonderful good things we're going to talk about how to stay in optimism. I don't want it driving shotgun, and never turn the wheel over to your ego. So that context then becomes, what do I need to do this effectively and move forward? And if I'm comfortable, it's my ego. If I'm not comfortable, it's your intuition, which that's what I want to live in.
Thanks, Bill. Now, the third element, determination. And as was stated in our explanation up front, not frantic striving, but a steady, heart-centered devotion to what truly matters, or determination as fuel. Love to hear your
Yeah.
thoughts around that.
Confucius said, it doesn't matter how slowly you go as long as you do not stop. See, we're always looking for, oh, here's a good solution, bang, and off we go, and we're thrilled. Really good things take time. One of the things that Esther and I are involved in is a company called LifeWave, and they make patches. I don't have any, they're on my body, and I'm not prepared to show them. There's patches, cool, and they're about that big. And when they're finished, they're used up, you can put them with the plants or put them on your animals and stuff. I decided to collect a bunch, and I made a painting, and it's in the process. I did a Fibonacci sequence, and I put 2,025 patches on a piece of canvas. It's very cool. And I absolutely knew. I painted lots of stuff. There's paintings around. The one painting behind Esther is one that you see. So I've done a lot of paintings. And I'm pretty quick. When other people come into our workshops, they'll paint a painting. I'll paint 6 or 8. I've got something going on. When I download, it's pretty fast. So I got started on this. Esther went off to Hawaii for some workshop last fall, and I set up the dining room so that I could be right there, do it every day. And I started putting these patches on, which I knew would take maybe a day or day and a half. 2 weeks! I was not impressed. And I couldn't do it any faster because you can only go so far. They'd slide. And, so the conversation became, okay, no amount of glue. By the way, I had to go through a bunch of different kinds of very expensive glue and finally ended up with a piece of glue that I used in construction 6 years ago. Perfect. I can't even remember the name of it. Esther, do you remember the
BL
name of the glue that I
9000.
ended up using? BL 9000. We all know it's great stuff. I can even hang it outside and it won't fall off. That's determination. I was not happy. I was frustrated because I paint and it's done. This, by the way, that painting is not finished, which is also another thing. Whenever I do something, it's done, finished, done, hang it on the wall. All art, there's a, I don't know what you can see it. Yes, in my light switch, it says, all art is abandoned, and it all includes risk. I was not willing to abandon this, so that determination just to stay in it. Benjamin Disraeli said, through perseverance, many people win success out of what seemed destined to be certain failure. Virtually every single science experiment that has turned something, you can have your judgment of whether it's a good thing to have had happen in our world or not, all of them come from somebody being determined because that didn't work. And they looked at it and went, penicillin. He was so fed up and frustrated, he went on a 2-week vacation, threw the stuff in the corner of his lab. He came back and all this stuff over all his shoes and the clothes, it's all covered in this whatever. And he's like, what's that? Penicillin. That's why some of you don't eat penicillin that's on the edges of your cheese, but I totally understand. Great works are performed not by strength, but by determination. Doesn't matter what the work is. How many of you have children? Yeah, my condolences. Who knew? If somebody had told us that's what you're going to have to go through. And by the way, it's not going to last, oh, it's so great. They're now walking and it's great. No, 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 no. You spend the first 3 years trying to get them to talk and walk, and then you spend the next 25 years trying to get them to shut up and sit down. So I get it. Kids are amazing. I had a call from my son-in-law last night or the night before. He's trying to fix I helped renovate some of their houses. And he's trying to fix a plumbing pipe. Dad, can you help me? It doesn't go away. That contact, it's going to happen because the strength and the determination of both of us. He'll figure it out. I'm not going up to Kamloops to help him do it. Dreams don't work unless you do, John Maxwell. Dreams don't work unless you do. Energy and persistence conquer all things, Benjamin Franklin. The path to success is to take massive, determined action, Tony Robbins. You may encounter many defeats, but you must not be defeated, Maya Angelou. Success is how high you bounce when you hit bottom. Most of us don't think about bouncing when we hit bottom. We're kind of wallowing in our own filth because we can't stand it. We don't know what to do. Life is terrible. It always seems impossible until it's done. Nelson Mandela. Rivers know this. There's no hurry because we're going to get there someday. I'll quote anybody. That comes from Winnie the Pooh. Act as if you can make a difference because you can make a difference. So as we look at our own determination, how often have you given up? And I can't remember who the guy was. Anyway, he wrote a bunch of books. And he talked about if you give up one step, there's a wonderful joke told about this where the guy, he's running through the woods. He's trying to get away from horrible animals that are chasing him. And he falls off the edge of a cliff and he slides down the cliff, and he grabs a hold of a bush. And he's praying, please save me. And he says it 3 or 4 times and a big voice booms out from the heavens. Let go of the branch. And he's like, that's not going to happen. So he's hanging on until daylight. Daylight comes, he looks down, he's that far from the ground. See, most of us don't want to trust spirit. We don't want to trust God. We don't want to trust, whatever it is, we don't want to. Because we have an override switch that goes, yeah, that can't work. That can't be. I'm not willing for that. Determination will get us through stuff even when life is pretty. Because it is sometimes. And it doesn't always work the way you thought. I've had art where I put stuff on the canvas and gone, oh, that's not what I know what I can do with that. Because I'm willing to change direction at high speed. How many of you were at one time in your life 3 years old? Yeah, okay, most of you, good. Some of you, I noticed Stan didn't raise his hand. I guess he wasn't 3 once. The context there is that they know how to change direction at high speed. And they do it all the time. And they do it wisely because they're determined to do, for example, my son comes in, he knows there's a rule, don't eat. He's an old guy now, he's 55. But when he's 3 or 4, he knows that he can't have something to eat before dinner. So he comes in, looks at me, and he says, can I have a cookie? I'm busy. I just bumped into him at the door, and I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever. I learned, by the way, to always say, what did your mother say? That's a very good way to keep sure those ducks are kept in a row. But yeah. I go into the kitchen, and my wife at the time says, yeah, don't let Jason eat anything because we're going to have dinner in 15 minutes. Yeah, it's too late. He's determined. He knows he can't ask it from his mom, but he can get it from me. Or he lobbies his sister, who's a few years younger, go get a cookie. And she goes and gets him. She gets caught. It's not her cookie. These two are really brilliant and determined to get what they want. Kids, when they're crying, they don't want to finish their meal. Yeah, well, you got 3 more bouts, well, you don't get dessert. And they're like, yeah, okay, whatever. I don't get any dessert. What do they do at 7:30? No, you have some dessert. And you give it to them. Determined. Where did that go? We all know how to do it. Where are we in it? What do we do with that determination?
Now that you've explained your ideas and concepts of disillusionment, discernment, and determination, I know that you wanted to discuss how do we actually do this? Some ways to accomplish this. And I believe that we have a PowerPoint
Yep.
that we can share.
And I believe that eyes open, mind engaged, and heart awake can't be done doing the eyes open, then doing the mind engaged, then doing the heart awake. It must be done as a collective. Those 3 steps must be in tandem. I don't think they can be separated. That's my opinion. So, start your day with truth and beauty. This doesn't mean grab your phones and read all your emails or texts or whatever. What would the truth be? And this is where these irises that are in our yard that we wrestled for 3 years to get to bloom. They are spectacular. And it doesn't matter for me if it's raining or sunny. I go out and look at that. That's truth. That's beauty. The context of blades of grass. I know we can have big judgments about not having grass and putting in, instead of lawns, putting in food. I'm with you. But look at the beauty. Smell a forest. Go for a walk. And Esther doesn't like me calling them lovely little ponds and lakes, because they're not. They're little potholes in our neighborhood that are a little bigger than a pothole in a road, but they're actually quite beautiful, especially when they have ducks and frogs and the sound of birds. By the way, did you know this? When the birds, if you can get up, and this is a big challenge, but if you can get up at daybreak and listen to the birds are in fact signaling the flowers that it's time to open. Wow, I didn't know that. That is so cool. So go and watch flowers open. Watch what happens. Sometimes when you watch a flower open, there's a bee that's fallen asleep in there and now can finally go back to the hive. They actually sometimes park themselves in a flower that's going to close up and protect them overnight. How cool is that? When you also in the morning start your day with soul fueling information, the headlines, they're going to really suck you in. Set a tone with something true and beautiful. I don't care if it's the scriptures, if it's a Thich Nhat Hanh book, if it's something that lifts your spirit and you feel that it lifts your spirit. Start with that. We've got some amazing, what do we call them? Affirmations, powerful affirmations that we use every time we get together in Life Force Canada. Live in those. Read them in the morning. Read them at night. I had a bump with a dear friend a couple weeks ago, and it triggered me to write more affirmations about how I need to show up. What's up for me in that? I read those affirmations every single day. And in the last 2 days, I've added 2 more to them because it's gone, that's interesting. I should do that. That's pretty important. Read something soul fueling.
Bill, before you move on to the next one, there's a comment in the chat. If someone is in PTSD, simple tools like these may be difficult to use to break through the traumas.
I'd agree. Yes.
That?
So Karen's just put in something underneath that. Music. Music will help. The other thing is our bodies, when we're in PTSD, and just so we're clear, I am not going to be frivolous about this. It is a big deal. And it needs work, and you need help with it. You need somebody outside you that can see some of the things you're doing. Many of our personal dialogues with ourselves really take us down. So I'll give you an example. When my son was about 4, he wanted to pull the milk out of the fridge. I know we drank milk. We don't do it anymore. He pulled the milk out of the fridge, and it fell. Didn't break because it was one of those plastic bottles. I know plastic should be, I got it all. We've learned some things along the way. It fell on the floor and spilt milk everywhere. And my first reaction was to go get his small trucks and drive trucks through them so that we could see the trails of the truck as we drove them around the kitchen. That's what we did first. Most of us don't do that. In PTSD, we are focused on trying to fix the broken. So one of the most powerful tools in NLP, in neurolinguistic programming, is because when we're in a PTSD state and we're in a depressed, down, non-resourceful victim state, because that's where we are, we need to lift our chins, we need to push our heads up and look up and then make every effort to stay in that same energy. And you can't do it. Because as soon as you as soon as you change your visage, as soon as you change your position and perspective, you cannot stay depressed. And this, just so we're clear, this is a fun place. That this can be kind of, how are we doing for time? Are you okay? Yeah. So we got a lot to get through here. Okay. So little kids, they go to their mom. I just want you to think of this in terms of visual, auditory, kinesthetic. When they go to their mom, they're upset, they're crying, their heart is broken, and they think that their life is going to end because everything's terrible. Their mom gets down on her knees, brings the child in close to the mom, and the child puts their head on the mom's shoulder and stays in the kinesthetic state of sadness, depression, life is a bitch. What happens with the dad goes, come on, honey, and puts his hands out, and the child reaches up to be picked up by dad, feels pretty good, except the minute that they reach up, they actually stop crying. So start paying attention to this. When you do that, the child actually stops crying, which does what's called in neurolinguistics a pattern interrupt. When the child reaches up, pattern interrupt, you bring the child up, you put the child back, you put them back into a kinesthetic state, and here's what's cool, they go back to crying. But it's not as deep and as rich at crying. So guess why they like mom better? This isn't sexism. If the dad gets down on his knees and does the same thing, the child loves to stay in the kinesthetic state. Much of what's happened in PTSD processes is you are caught in a feeling state. And in a feeling state, you can't spell, you can't write, you can't ride a bike, you can't do anything. You're in really tough shape because your entire system has been hijacked. So if you can lift your chin, I'm not asking you to change your feelings, just lift your chin and look up and then try to stay in that feeling. That'll help break the pattern because it's got you by the throat. That's what I would do in the context of that place of how do I get to truth? Because you don't want to live in PTSD. You don't want to live. It's a very, very high price to pay over time. Lots of people take their lives because it's so brutal. And it doesn't feel like there's a way out. And by the way, talk therapy won't help. Well, I shouldn't say that. Talk therapy won't work over time. It can help in the short term because it sometimes just chatting it through is pretty good. Somebody's put in the chat, Bible apps are good. Yeah, as long as my faith and my religion and my belief in spirituality is not grounded in something that was punitive and punishing, as long as that's the case. Number 2 is unsubscribe from despair cycles. I don't think that dog's happy at all. What we're talking about here is what we tend to do. We need to limit our exposure to media because the media is feeding us helplessness. We can't get out of this. Even if you look at some of the apps, you can look up, oh, hypertension, what do I do with that? And it tells you 10 things that if this is happening to you, you're going to die, go to the hospital. There's that kind of stuff that is not going to service you or help you in any way. Set the tone with something true and beautiful. And it doesn't matter to me what it is. If there's some great music out there, if you look at some of the music we normally wouldn't be listening to, Rachmaninoff, and if you listen to Beethoven, and again, learn Beethoven's story. His symphony, Ninth Symphony, he was totally deaf. And he had to lay on the floor when the orchestra played it so that he could feel it in his chest. And even when they ended, they had to tap him on the back because he was in such bliss from feeling that through his chest. Wow. There is a whole premise here that we can start looking for getting out of this despair cycles. And this can include when you're in a scrap with your loved one. You're probably not going to win. And in fact, my experience, I was in a bunch of different realms where we were doing conflict resolution and all that kind of thing, mediation. My experience, even with divorced couples, they'd like it just to end. Can we just get this done and put it in our rearview mirror? Can we get it behind us? They would like that. Okay, but what they want to do is they want to win on the way. It's like, okay, those don't fit. You have to be willing to give up winning and figure out a way that both of you can come out of this as unscathed as possible. So that's getting out of the despair cycle. We got to hustle here. Moving on. Name your breakdown. Give it a name. You know, if you've got a tumor, call it Tina Tumor. You're still going to have to deal with it. But start being both playful and let the rest of your cells know there's a job to be done. It's critical that we do it. It gets us out of the helplessness. You got to let the grief, feel the grief. Don't calcify it, feel it. Clear the space for the real, what's underneath that? What's the real vision underneath it? I broke my back many, many years ago and I was told I'd never walk again. It isn't true. And by the way, the reason they said that was because of the way the break was. And he had a history saying that if you break that, you're never going to walk again. But he hadn't dealt with me and I hadn't dealt with him. So the context became, what do I need to do to fix that? And I spent a year fixing it and looking to the heavens to figure out how to get through this in as quick a way as possible. Discern your own voice from the noise. Listen to all the noise that's around us. Again, in the discernment conversation, is this my voice? There's some great, Byron Katie. Is that true? Great question. And it also brings it back, because lots of times, of course it's not true. Byron Katie, Brendan Bays, another one. Going through and figuring out, is that my voice? Lots of you will talk about, I have a voice in my head. I have voices in my head. For years, I thought I had the Mormon Tabernacle Choir in there. A friend of mine said, no, that's not. They're just a committee of assholes. You don't need to listen to them. I think there's some merit to that. The premise is this. Check to see whose voice that is. When you crank the volume up on the voice, you will be astonished. I'm going to guess 99.99999% of the time, it's an aunt, an uncle, a mom, a dad, a grandma, a grandpa. It's a neighbor you didn't like. Those are the voices. Well, you don't have to listen to them because they're just those voices. Number 5, this is really important. Take a small aligned action each day. Just one, little one. I'm cleaning up my art studio because it's got a little crowded. And so I'm dealing with it. One painting at a time, one jar of paint, one tube of paint at a time. I just go on. I spend sometimes only 10 minutes every single day. I went out there the other day and I went, whoa, I've really done well. And I've got still lots to do. Phone call to somebody, a garden bed, a donation, a boundary, change a boundary. Momentum builds optimism because you really want to tell stories of courage and creativity, and we don't tend to do that with each other. Believe it or not, that's one of my most fabulous paintings that I've ever done. It's called Maombi. And she's amazing. And that was while I was in the process of painting her. She is not for sale. Check with people. What's up for them? How do you create beauty? Go and, I know we get a little silly here. Hug a tree? Yeah, go and do that. It's quite amazing. Listen to the trees. Listen to the bird song. Paint. And please, don't just put a smock on. Do what this little one's done. A little paint. Pretty fantastic. Go and dance. I can't dance. Yes, you can. Just stand around. Move your feet. Doing whatever that. Cook. When you're cooking for people. Wow. Sitting watching a sunset. Come on. Nothing more powerful than that. Speak of what is working in your life. Get together with people. Maybe it's only 2 people. We've discovered there's a couple people in our life don't like games, but many of the people we hang with like games. And their games, it seems with some of the people we hang out with, they don't give a shit who's winning or losing because it doesn't matter. We just laugh our faces off. It just gets silly and great. And there's a sharing in that, oh my word, who knew that we could do this with so much fun? Sacred optimism grows community. Share food, pray, plan, laugh, build networks. And this is huge. When everybody else is in chaos, when somebody else is in chaos, then your job, you are called to be calm. And I believe calm, I know you're not going to buy this because you all have children and you say that none of them are calm. They are. Look at when they finally fall asleep and they just go to sleep and it's calm. Look at it sometimes when they wake up. One of mine, we had to give him books because he would always wake up earlier than we wanted to. And he was calm for an hour reading. He couldn't read. He was only 2.5 or 3. Your nervous system affects others. Regulate yourself. And here's why you regulate yourself. It's an act of service. It's an act of service. Then speak to the future. It's what we're doing on these calls. Talk to grandchildren. Talk to kids. I talked to a little kid outside today who I have no idea what he was saying because he can't talk. He just blah, 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 blah. And he was showing me something that made no sense to me at all. And so I got down on my knees in front of him and we engaged in a conversation that was beyond hilarious. And his mother turned to me. She had some things that she was taking in, 2 cups of coffee to whoever was in the house. And she said, he has never done that with anybody, especially strangers. Just do that. Live in a way your future self and all of those around you would be proud to be a part of you doing that. Oh, look at that. It's all recapped. Lovely butterfly. So that's it all together. Those are the 10. If you want, take a picture of that. Now, this is really important. I'm not going to read this whole thing to you, but I want you to really look at this. Optimism, it's always a choice. You can invite vision and creativity, and you can see meaning in the participation, even though it might not be the participation you would have wanted. Watch what happens when they sign up. One of the things I've done in my art classes, we always put a canvas or two aside and just say, have your leftover paint, just put it on the canvas, see what happens. You should see some of those. They're stunning, and they have no vision in the truest sense. They're magnificent. Fuel your life with love and purpose. And I'm not a big guy on legacy. Let people know who you are today. They may remember you later on. When you notice yourself pulling out of doing stuff, when you're thinking it's all inevitable, it's all going to hell in a handbasket, we're all going to be blown up and it's going to be a nuclear war. Yeah, that's not necessarily true. And then when you live in a status quo and you accept it and it's broken and it's not working, man, that's depressing.
Bill, we've had a request to go back to the previous slide, so I'm going to do that for a moment. So if
Yep.
anyone wants to take a screenshot,
Yep.
there it is.
That's enough time. Move on. No, I'm kidding.
So there we go. And if you need to, I can come back to it at the end again.
Sure. Okay.
Anything else on this?
No. Fear, defeat, and exhaustion. I know that's where we're living. I know that's how it feels, but it isn't true. Resignation is a deeply human response to pain and overload, but it can quietly erode a sense of inner sovereignty. Sacred optimism, by contrast, doesn't deny the darkness. It simply refuses to let the darkness have the final word.
If anyone has any other questions, feel free to put them in the chat. And Bill, do you have any other final thoughts for us?
Well, there's no questions. Life just got easy, so that's kind of fun. I think there's something that for me, because optimism is a challenge, I don't dispute that. I think it's a sacred calling for all of us, and I think it's a sacred place that we began from. So I think it's actually easier to get back to the context of being in the sacred optimism. I think it's easier to do that once we go to the first or second step. And somebody's saying,
we do have a couple questions.
okay.
Rusty asks, can you say more about number 10, speaking to the future?
Yeah, so I'll go back to my broken back. I was told I'd never walk, and that was from 3 doctors at Vancouver General Hospital. They were quite adamant. I asked to be checked out of the hospital, and they said, well, you're going to wreck your back even more. And I said, I don't think that's possible. You've told me I've lost 75% of my spinal fluid. I don't think it can get any worse. I can't walk. And what you're telling me is I probably won't be able to poop or pee for the next 4 or 5 days. I'm willing to risk that. That's on me. Please give me the papers I have to sign. 27. Signed them all. Had to be taken home by an ambulance. Not pretty, because as far as I'm concerned, if my future state was that, I was willing to risk that for anything else. And understand that my back was broken because I did something foolish. I jumped off a fence 9 times safely, 1 time wasn't. So the future state for us is ours. There is no past. There's actually no future. There's only the present moment. What I do in this present moment will, in fact, dictate to me what I'm going to be doing for the future. So I'm repairing and reestablishing my art thing because, my art studio is a little hard. It's a 2-car garage in a neighborhood in Vancouver or in Langley. And it's freaking cold in the middle of winter. And my heater, I got it so that I could get out there and paint. My paint wouldn't agree with me because it was too thick. So even trying to thaw the paint out was a pain. But I'm persisting. And now it isn't that cold. I can now get going and I can start painting like crazy again, which I'm intending to do. As I've done that, just so we're clear about my own brain, I didn't have a lot of downloads. I have a download and then I have to go paint it. I had virtually no downloads December, January, February. None. I checked in. I do my meditation in the morning. Yeah, no paintings. I can't say the same thing now. I'm up about 30 and I got to paint like mad because I got a bunch that I got to paint. I got to get them on the canvas. And I think Rusty, is she still here?
Yes.
Rusty, what do you say about why it's important that I write that first draft? You have a quote.
I say that the first draft, the purpose of the first draft, only purpose of the first draft is to exist. That's like for your painting. The purpose of your first draft at painting is just to exist.
Yeah. Now, if that doesn't predict future, I'm just going to write it. And what we tend to do when we're writing, because I've been doing a bit of that, and the coolest part about writing is we want to edit right away. And that's a bad idea. Just write it. And if you leave it for 4 or 5 days and then come back and then you can do some editing, but even then, just write. Just write. Because when we tend to, and we've got a magnificent writer in one of our writing groups, she writes, and then before she's going to continue to write, she rereads some stuff and gets caught in editing. No, don't reread it. Yeah, but I'm not sure where it is. No, just write. Trust your intuition. Trust your first draft. Trust that your standing in whatever you're doing today is going to make an enormous difference for your future tomorrow. Does that answer that?
Yes. Thank you. And Karen asks, do you think discernment forces us to be in the present?
No, it invites us. I don't think it's a force. I think it's an invitation. Because I think discernment, for example, I have seen very few 5-month-old babies walk. Because they're smart enough to know, yeah, I can't do that yet. My hips aren't connected the way they need to be, and I kind of flop all over the place. I can't hold my head up. So I think discernment is a built-in part of who we are as a little human being. And we've overridden it by our negative self-talk and all the crap that goes on around us that keeps us below the line.
Thank you. And we have a few comments in the chat as well saying that was and is beautiful, great presentation, wonderful talk. I will revisit. Love your enthusiasm and passion for life, Bill. And also amazing presentation, Bill. Thank you so much. We are at the top of the hour. If anybody has any final questions, great. There's still time to put them in the chat. And if not, one of the things that you mentioned earlier, Bill, was about affirmations. And so we want to finish with that. Is there anything else you'd like to leave our listeners with today before we go to that
Sure.
mindful moment?
Fabulous. I would like to leave a quote and a question to everybody. Here's the quote. This is the true joy in life, being used for a purpose recognized by yourself as a mighty one, being a force of nature instead of a feverish, selfish little clod of ailments and grievances complaining that the world will not devote itself to making you happy. I am of the opinion that my life belongs to the whole community, and as I live, it is my privilege to do for it whatever I can do. I want to be thoroughly used up when I die, for the harder I work, the more I love. I rejoice in life for its own sake. Life is no brief candle to me. It's a sort of splendid torch, which with I've got a hold of for a moment, and I want to make it burn as brightly as possible before handing it on to future generations. So here's the question. What's one way I can live from sacred optimism this week? What's one way that you could live from sacred optimism this week?
Fantastic. And there was one other question that just appeared, and that is, do you have a sense of what the nervous system regulation practice might be from your
serious drinking?
perspective?
No, I'm kidding. I think it's, I think the most powerful, so I know about 14 or 15 different breathing techniques. I think the most powerful one is this. You take 2 sniffs in through your nose and you breathe out through your mouth. And within about 4 breaths, it actually settles your nervous system. So it looks like this. That's as simple as that. And the other one that the SEAL teams use is 4, 7, 8. Breathe in for 4, hold for 7, exhale for 8. Breathe in for 4, hold for 7, exhale for 8. Those two, pretty remarkable in taking down the charge. Now, here's the clincher to those. If you're really attached to being charged and the person who's charging you or has poked the bear, it's really pissing you off, let me tell you, you will want to hang on to that because you want to take them to town. And that's not going to help you solve the whole mechanism of settling down that whole system. And just so you know, I use those every single day. And not because I'm supercharged and I'm fed up at the world. They just really help to,
Thank you, Bill. It's been a pleasure to be listening to you, Bill. Thank you for that inspirational talk. And let's take a moment, feel our feet on the ground. And I'm going to read a portion of this sovereign power affirmation for us tonight. We're just going to take a couple of moments. So let's do maybe on your own time, in your own space, that either one of those breathing exercises that Bill mentioned. 2 breaths in and through your nose and a breath out through your mouth. I can't do that because I'll be reading. Whatever it is, feel your feet on the ground, get present, and just listen. My sovereign power affirmation. I now call all my life force energy back to me from every person, place, entity, from every space, time, portal, and dimension, from every connection, attachment, and vessel where I left it. And I will add in here to find my own optimism. I harness the power of love to protect me from anything that is not loving. Anytime I lose my way or forget what really matters, I summon love to remind me of my own strength. Love is the way I walk in truth. I breathe and I trust that I am sovereign over my experience, and in doing so, accept full responsibility to honor myself, my vision, and my body's needs. I am a light bringer and I speak in the name of love. I do not waver in the face of fear because I know what I am here to give. I don't need to fight when I know that peace is who I am. I no longer dance the dance of people-pleasing, placating, or niceties. My energy, my body, my emotions, my boundaries, my joy, my healing, my choices. All of them are my responsibility, and I accept this responsibility with reverence and optimism. I trust myself with my fullness. I trust that others are capable of healing without my rescuing, without tending, or without saving. I trust my own capacity to feel my discomfort when others are having distressful experiences, projections, or want me to give more than I can. I trust my sovereignty to choose who, what, and how to use my energy in this time. I trust myself to make bold choices with what I hear as I tune in. I trust myself to recover when I get it wrong. I now make the sovereign choice to believe that it is safe to be in my fullness and for others to be in theirs. I choose optimism. This is my freedom, and so it is. Breathing in, life force energy, and out, life force energy. Together we rise. Thank you so much for being here.